Hey guys, Aleksey for Ace5 Education doing tutorial for CG Tuts Plus. This is the lipstick tutorial. This is part 1. We're doing the modeling. So let's get right into it. Let's have a look at our final product once again. And I'll show you two things. I'll show you how to model two different ones. Because it really depends on what your approach is. It's going to be a more simple one, which is going to be this stick. It's a bit more chubby, but you can tweak it and stuff to your liking. And then I'm also going to show you how to model this one, which is a bit of a different approach, but also just depends what kind of look you're going for. And it's going to be the lid and the piece. Okay, so let's go. New scene file. Let's start with a cylinder. So the first one we're going to model is going to be the soft one, and I'm going to show you a little trick which is important in modeling. So let's start with Hypernurbs first. Let's talk about Hypernurbs. If we put a cylinder into a Hypernurb by holding the Alt key, clicking on Hypernurb, you'll see firstly that the edges didn't get smooth for some reason. They still stayed very sharp. The reason why is because the cylinder object by default, to make it editable, these edges aren't actually connected. Like if you select these faces and you move them, there's no connection. There's like two edges at each point, which is why there's no smoothing. So all you have to do is either deselect everything or you select everything by pressing Ctrl A. And you right click and you find the command called optimize. You can also press Shift C and type in optimize. And for me, I have this command. There you go. And see, now it's smooth. I have this command mapped to tilde3. Tilde is the button next to your 1 key on the left of it, or the left of the keyboard. And that, because it's a command that I use very often, because you always get a primitive and you have to, make it into one object. Anything with a cap, so cones, tubes, oil tanks, they all have the same problem. Anyway, now that we have this, I'm going to show you how Hypernurbs works. Right now, as you can see, it made it very smooth. But if we go to our knife tool and we select loop here, knife tool is, by the way, here. My shortcut for it is K. If we add a cut on the edge here, you'll see it sharpens it up. And if we add another cut here, sharpens it up further. And we get a nice bevel. Now how Hypernurbs works is the closer the two edges are to each other, the more defined the edges. So for example, let's get rid of this edge here. So now if we go to the move tool and we double click this edge here, the further away we move them, the smoother the whole thing gets. See? So sharp edge, smooth edge. And you don't have to do the whole one, you can just do one, and as you can see, we get sharp edges here, and then it smooths out for this edge. Similarly, if you get these edges, if you let's say we rotate it and we move it closer to this part, you'll see we form like an angle here. So you get a sharper edge. So this is the approach that we're going to be using for our lipstick. So delete this. Let's make a new cylinder. Let's make it editable. Press tilde3 or optimize and throw in a Hypernurb. Now this is also a problem you're going to notice with the cylinder the way it is. You see these ridges that you get, these ribs? That's not exactly what we're looking for. So to fix this, what you have to do is you select all these faces. By the way, notice that when I make a cylinder, your cylinder might be different. Your cylinder might have a lot of subdivisions. Mine only has 12 because whenever I model stuff, I like to start with low poly objects. So what you do is you set this to 12, and then you go edit and set as default. And then every time you make a new cylinder, it will be nice and low poly, ready for modeling. So back to our cylinder here. We select these faces here. By the way, I switch between faces and points. If you don't notice here, I have the map to my keyboard shortcuts 1, 2, 3, and then object mode is 4. I changed it when I was learning Modo, and it turned out to work really well. So if you use 1, 2, and 3, and 4 to switch between these, it makes your workflow much faster. So anyway, 3 for faces. Now I press the I key, which is inner extrude, extrude inner, and I will click and drag in an empty space to pull these guys in. As you can see, that kind of fixes the problem, but as soon as we move this guy up, the problem comes back. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna press UZ, which is the equivalent of melt. It's over there in the command, Shift C, melt. That's the one. And it makes them into one polygon. And then we're gonna go into the knife tool, and we're gonna go line, and we're gonna make some new cuts. We're going to cut straight across here. We're gonna cut straight across here, straight across here, straight across here, and straight across here. This already makes it much better, but the problem is that right now here we have a triangle, and triangles are bad for smoothing. Not as bad as what we had before, because we had a whole bunch of polygon lines coming into one point. That's really bad. But right now, not the best. Triangle's still not good, because when we move this, we're gonna start getting these little pinches. See, like there. Not good. So let's move this guy back. So we're gonna get the knife tool again, and we're gonna cut across it. And now we're gonna get these 2 points. Use the selection. I switch between selection and move tool by hitting the space bar. Hold the shift key to select the other point. Use the scale tool to scale them in. Actually, let's select these points as well and scale them in as well. And now, see, it's nice and round, and there's no ugly edges. And if we move it up, see, still nice and smooth. We have a bit of it's still a bit of an issue that we have there. Oh, because we got the triangles again. That's right. That's what we have to do. We have to get this edge now, and this edge, and then right click and click dissolve. And now we have polygons there. Still not super smooth, but much better than it was before. It's disproportionately better for, geometry. So now that we've done that, press Alt A and you'll see, smooth. It has loops going and stuff. Alt A, by the way, changes between seeing the actual poly gauge and seeing a smooth version of the poly gauge. Depending on what you're modeling, you will switch between them. I prefer to stay in this one because I like to know what the actual polygons look like. So yeah, okay. Let's move on. Let's go back to our poly mode. Let's move this guy up. Let's rotate him over. Let's move him around. I switch between the tools here, by the way, with WER, between the move, rotate, and scale tool. It makes it a lot faster than going back and clicking them every time. But also, if you have this little tool here, it's Shift V, and you select this HUD and active tool. There it is. And then you can click on the last couple of tools used if you forgot the shortcut or for whatever reason. So let's add another loop cut here. K tool, loop. Okay, that looks about right. Got another one. That does not look like what we want it to look, does it? Okay, let's get rid of these loop cuts. Let's check back. I like to check back on what I did, because sometimes you experiment with stuff and you get there and yeah, see, there's just one big piece and it's just rotated down. So let's scale this guy up. Let's add one loop cut just along the edge to make it maybe UI to expand selection, or you can press V, select, and expand selection. Wherever it is, grow selection, there you go. Let's scale this guy in a bit. That looks about right. Let's add another cut down here, so it's some snapping. There we go. I still think we need another cut here. No, we don't need a cut to it, just like that. Okay, well, I guess to each their own. Yeah, there we go. So we just have to make it squashed a bit. So there, and now we have a nice chubby little lipstick. Scale it down a bit here. It's still a completely valid approach, you know, depending on which kind of lipstick you're going for. But we're gonna make a different one. This one is just the first part. So let's move this guy over. Let's make the next lipstick. Make a cylinder. Now for this lipstick, I'm gonna increase the subdivisions a bit because I want something very specific. See, I want there to be 3 faces pointing on one of these axes, and you'll see why that is in a minute. But I think this is the correct amount. Let's just check in here. No. If you see in your other views, you don't see the subdivision, it's because your display is set to isoparms instead of wireframe. See? Okay, good. That's what I wanted. I want this evenly, these 3 edges facing in one direction. Whoops. Okay. Sorry. So let's extrude this guy upwards. And let's make it editable. Press tilde 3. Wrote on a hypernode. Wonderful. So we're going to do it. In this case, it's not as important to make that the top thing where we did, because this way it's just going to come to a point. So let's extrude this guy up. Let's scale him down to a point. Move it up. Press the I key. Scale it in. Kind of, we have to scale this guy a bit, just to reduce those edges. Press the K tool here with a knife, and what we're going to do now is we're going to select these 3 faces. We're going to go to the edge tool, and we're going to move this edge down. We're going to change right now. See, if you move it down, it'll pull it out, which isn't quite. We want it to just slide down. So what we do is we go here and we go W for the move tool, or here move tool, and you'll see here now I can change the orientation from axis to world, and now I can just move it down and I get this nice little shape here, and I'll go to face mode, and now I'll press the I key and I'll scale it in just a bit. Then I'll use the actual scale tool to push it in. But the thing is, what I want to do also is I want to add some more loop cuts. Add like one here and one there, because I want to get these points here. I want to select these points, holding the shift key with the selection tool, and I want to move them out so it's more like a droplet shape. And this way it's getting closer to what I want, but now I want to also get this edge here and move it down. I want it to smooth into the rest of the shape so it's not so sharp here. Maybe I want to scale this whole thing down. By the way, if you notice, I do this rectangular, when I select all these objects, I do this rectangular selection without apparently selecting any tool. If you have a mouse with forward and back buttons, they're 4 and 5. One of them gives you this radial menu, it's the back button, but the forward button lets you temporarily switch to rectangular selection, which is very convenient, because if your rectangular selection is set to options and this thing is unticked, it means when I'm in my normal selection tool, I can select things that I can see, but it doesn't select anything behind it. But if I want to select, for example, this whole, all of these points, this whole loop of points, I can just click and hold my forward button and drag the selections just here, and it selects all the points behind it as well. So here we have it. I don't like how thick it is, so let's scale the whole thing down. Oops. Scale tool, scale it down. Now it's a bit too much like a bullet and too pointy, so I think I'm going to go to point mode and I'm going to scale these guys together a bit. I'm going to move them up, and I'm going to select these points and deselect these points, move down a bit, and maybe select these points. down a bit. Move this one down a bit. It seems about right, but I think I kind of stuffed it up. So let's undo all this, Control Z until we get back to our bullet shape. Now, definitely needs to be, scaled down slightly, like just in these two axes. Not too much. I think now we need to maybe move the points just down. There we go. Yes. If you have a reference to work with, much better. You know, I have this one, the one that I made. That's kind of what I'm going off. Now that I look at it, I don't know if I want this edge that far away, a bit close. I just want it to be a bit smooth in these top edges. But it's really a matter of personal taste. So yeah, cool. We got this lipstick going. So next we're going to make the cylinder. It's actually a cylinder that turns into a square. It's going to be the base, this kind of thing at the bottom there. You can't really see it here, but if I show you my other file, turn on Hypernurbs, you'll see that the object that at the top, this thing here, it's a, it's a circle, but the bottom it shifts into a square shape. That's what we're going to make right now. Then later we'll use the same thing for the lid. So, by the way, if you're thinking how I switch between projects so fast, in Shift, if you press Shift F12, you get your command manager, and here you press the next project, and I have it mapped through Control tilde. So when I want to switch, I just go Control tilde, and it switches to the next project. Handy little tip. So let's make a new cylinder. This is the right amount of circles for us. Let's move this guy away for a moment. Okay, the usual process, we press C, we press tilde 3 to optimize, we press OK. Once again, Shift C, optimize. If you can't find it, it's there. Or right click, points or faces. Don't forget to either have everything selected or nothing selected and select optimize, it's just down there. Okay, let's start. Let's go into our top mode. Let's select these points and then hold the Shift key and select these points. And then deselect these top points by holding the Control key. And switch to the Scale tool. Click and drag until they come in to form a square. As you can see, it is now, the bottom one is now squarish. The top one, see? The top one is still circle, but the bottom one is now square. Now, to make the edges even more defined, we're going to select these points and hold the Shift key, these points, and these points, and these points. And then don't forget, deselect the top points in this view, because we only have the points at the bottom. So yeah, once we have them, now what we do is we deselect these points as well and these points. We just need these points. And we scale them out by clicking the little red handles. We just scale them out this much, just so they can't overshoot these points. They have to just be before them. And then we select these points, hold the Shift key, these points, deselect the top points, and now we're going to scale them up. And as you can see, we have a nice square shape here. And the square shape turns into a circle shape on this side. Nifty, right? So let's drop this guy into a Hypernurb. And again, we have the old issue of it being too smooth. So we go K tool, K for knife. And we just add a cut here. And we can add a cut here. And we can add a cut here. And a cut here. And ta-da, we have our base. Now obviously you can scale it, you can move it down depending on how you want. But here's a nice little trick. Right now it evenly goes from square to circle. But if you want, for example, the square to keep going further up, if you add a knife cut like here, and then you go to the move tool and switch to the edge tool and double click this, you can now move it up. And now it will remain a square for longer, so it will only start shifting into the round thing much later. So you can tweak. For example, you can have it all the way square and then it just goes round in the end. So it really depends on what kind of object you're looking for. So I'm going to leave it at this, and I'm going to go to my point mode, and I'm going to get these points, and I'm going to just scale them in a bit. And then I'm going to move them up. And then I'm going to deselect these points, and I'm going to move these points back down. Because I think it should have a relatively small base. But yeah, there you have it. And also don't forget you can scale these guys out to achieve different results depending on what kind of container you're looking for. So now that we have this container finished, we will start modeling the chrome area that connects the container with the actual lipstick stick. So let's make another cylinder. Let's move the guy up. Let's scale him down a bit. Sorry about that. And let's add some cuts. Now, here we can see we have 1, 2, 3 areas. So, for these 3 areas, what we're going to do is we're going to move this guy up to the top. We're going to make it editable. We're going to press ~3, which is an optimize command, which we've talked about already. And we're going to get our point mode, and we're going to move these guys down. And then we're going to go to knife tool, which is in loop mode. And we're going to add 1 cut and 2 cuts. And what we're going to, firstly, yeah, it's good enough, I think. Maybe go back to the model tool and scale tool and maybe scale this out just a bit. Okay, good. Now let's select UI for UL for loop mode, or you can go V, select, and loop selection here. And select this one and hold the shift key and select this one. Now let's hold the D key, press the D key for extrude, which is here, extrude, and click and drag a bit, and then go UL again for loop mode. Holding the control key, click on this loop and unselect it, press the D key for extrude again, and click and drag until you get it close to the edge. And now as you can see, we get the shape that we were looking for. Now if you throw this in a Hypernurb, obviously it doesn't look like what we need it to look like. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our loop mode. We're going to select this loop, and this loop, holding the shift key, and press the I key, which is in extrude. And since it's there in a circle, they won't actually extrude, like they won't scale down, they won't scale down from the edges. So we click and drag, and ta-da! See, we get the little edges on the sides here. Exactly what we're looking for. So now we press UL again, and we click this one here, shift click this one here, and shift click this one here. And now we press I, and we click and drag, and ta-da! We have our connecting bit for our lipstick. Great, isn't it? Awesome. Okay, so next step, get our lipstick gun thingy, lipstick bullet, I guess. I'm not going to call it a bullet. Press ~X, which is reset PSR. If you go Shift C, reset PSR. There you go. ~X. It basically sets everything to 0 here. Very convenient. Or you can just manually set all these to 0. And then let's move it up. And as you can see right now, it's a bit too big. So let's scale it down using the R tool. Scale it down until it fits. And there you have it. Now, let's double click on this in the move tool. In the object tool, double click on it, there you go. And then we select, if you have a Hypernurbs and you have something in it, if you double click on it, you will select the thing under the Hypernurbs. Let's go to point mode and let's drag these points down a bit. I think they're a bit too high. That looks about right. I don't know, I don't use lipstick often enough to actually be able to tell if it looks right or not, but looks about right. Maybe make this thing a bit smaller. Yeah, it seems legitimate. Maybe if you use Limo lipstick, you can be more accurate. Anyway, next stage, we get this bit, and we Control-C, Control-V it, we copy it, and we rotate it around and we move it up here, and then we double click on it in the object mode here, and we get our points and we move them up, and we have a lipstick case. Now, as you saw in my image, I have this nice little gold layered disk there, which is not just a gold layered disk, it is actually a little inset that I did. So let's select our polygons. We press UI to expand the selection, or you can go V, select, and grow selection here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to first press, actually no, we're not, we're going to just select, oops, we're going to undo the expand selection. We're just going to select this, and we're going to press the I key, and we're going to scale it in a bit, and then we're going to push it down once, twice, and then we're going to press the I key again to in-extrude it once, and then press the D key, but this time push it back up so it's just above this layer, and push it up again, and then we can press UL once again to do a loop selection and extrude this guy to the edges, and then a little extrude as well to add some sharpness to it. And now we have this nice little kind of, gold plated kind of edge gap thingy that adds on top of it. So yeah, before we go on, I recommend getting all these objects, control clicking on all the polygon objects and pulling them out, and then getting all these objects and deleting them. This one we can just make a new null, pull it hold, and stick it in there, and then hide it, because we don't need it anymore, because for this project we're using this selection that we have. So yes, as long as we get all these objects together, let's go into our side view, let's align them, oops, all of these objects, shift click, if you click on the top one, shift click on the bottom one you want to select, and select all of them, and move them up so it's just above the null. Now make a Hypernurbs, don't hold the Alt key, just make a Hypernurbs, it'll make it at the origin, and then put all of these objects into the Hypernurbs. And actually no, you also have to make a null object also at the origin, put it under the Hypernurbs, and put all these objects into the null object. There you go, and now they're all smoothed, and they're all smoothed by one Hypernurbs object. So we don't have to worry, so we can turn it off and on very quickly. Let's move this lid off, let's rotate it sideways, let's move it down. Oh yeah, by the way, you probably want to make a hole in it, depending on how you want to orient it. So let's quickly make a hole in it. Select all these faces, press I, press D once for a small one, like click and drag for a small thing, and then click and drag again for a bigger one, and then again, and you probably want to scale it in a bit so it doesn't poke out here, and you're good to go. So, and you can pick which angle you want it to be from, doesn't really matter, but since we're going to have this little metal plated thing, probably a good idea to have metal plated thing facing you. So, let's name these quickly. This is our top lid, this is our chrome bit, this is our base, and this is our lipstick stick thing. There we go. Okay, so this concludes the modeling part of the tutorial, and in the next part I will start showing you how to add materials and lights and all that other wonderful stuff. I'll see you there.